Want to bring in now to the conversation Congressman Jim Himes of Connecticut, the new top Democrat on the House Intel Committee. Congressman, as always, it's great to talk to you. So I just said it right. You're the new ranking member of the Intel Committee. What do you think are going to be the implications of this incident, considering, of course, the question that Clint just put out there, which is what was China trying to learn?
Well, thanks for having me, Yasmin. Look, I think what people perhaps fail to appreciate is the counterintelligence value of recovering as much of this balloon and its equipment as possible. And by the way, watching it, because we live in a world where everything has to be a referendum on Joe Biden and Donald Trump, we're distracted from the fact that, first of all, nobody really knows what this thing was collecting. I'm on the Intelligence Committee, and I don't know yet. I expect to know this week. We don't know what we were able to glean by observing it, its capabilities, what sort of radio emanations it might have been doing. So there's a lot of questions still out there. I will tell you this, though. This is just a massive embarrassment for the Chinese, right? I mean, we go to great lengths to protect our sources and methods. And, this is, by their standards, not a success. And so, my guess is that they're going to be a little bit more careful about this sort of thing in the future.
Yeah, again, I just keep scratching my head. And we've been talking about this over the last hour or so, which is if China is so advanced in its technology and its intelligence capabilities, why do they have this massive white balloon floating at 60,000 feet in which folks from the ground can actually see? Do they really think we weren't going to spot this thing? Senator Schumer said the Gang of Eight, which you're now a part of, is going to get an intel briefing. Anything you can tell us about that?
Well, briefing hasn't happened yet, so no, there's nothing I can tell you about it. And even when it does, I may not be able to tell you much. But I can tell you that we're going to get something which has been in very, very short supply, as everybody has been commenting and making suggestions and everything, which is actually what happened. In other words, do we have reason to believe that the Chinese took a huge risk because there was something special about the equipment on this balloon and they couldn't obtain, the information they were looking for by satellite? We'll understand the tick-tock around the president's decision to wait until the balloon cleared the continental United States to shoot it down. Why did the military recommend that he wait until it not be over land? So the main thing we're going to get this week will be facts, and that'll be kind of a nice change of pace, considering the breathlessness of all of the commentary so far.
Yeah, yesterday, as we were breaking this story, there was certainly this conversation as to whether or not the U.S. government needs to be more transparent with the public about intelligence gathering when it comes certainly to our adversaries. Is this a conversation that is had behind closed doors? And do you see any benefit to something like this?
Yeah, look, in this case, again, it's an interesting question, right? We don't want to necessarily talk. In fact, we don't and we won't talk about what we know about Chinese or Russian capabilities on satellites or with other SIGINT interception. We just don't talk about that because we don't want the Russians and the Chinese to know what we know about them. Now, This is a different case, right? This is something that you can watch, with a telescope in your backyard in Montana, right? So in this case, I think transparency would be a good thing. Look, people get panicked when there is an absence of information, and so more information in a case like this is better. Now, again, having said what I did about this sort of turning into a referendum over Joe Biden and Donald Trump, not only do I want to understand the tick-tock of this particular action, but we've heard from defense officials that apparently under the Trump administration, 3 of these things floated over the continental United States. Why was the decision taken then not to take any action or not to inform the American people? This is, as somebody who does oversight, kind of my bread and butter.
So you brought it up, and I do want to get into that, which is Republicans' response to all of this. Many criticizing the Biden administration that they should have done something sooner, not allowed it to float continuously over the U.S. for some time. House Republicans, considering what we're learning, a resolution to condemn Biden over this. Michael McCaul, the chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee, saying, quote, "I'm going to be demanding answers and will hold the administration accountable for this embarrassing display of weakness." What do you make of this?
Well, what I make of this is that you have to separate this into 2 different things. Number one, the Republicans in the Congress are going to, regardless of the facts, because Michael McCaul has no more facts than I do right now. Michael McCaul is chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee. He doesn't know any more than I do what the tick-tock was. We'll know next week. But so what that tells you is that Republicans, regardless of what happened, they're going to attack the president. The president had shot it down early, ignoring the advice of his defense officials. They would be criticizing him for ignoring the advice of his generals. So we just need to accept that whatever happens, and in the total absence of facts, there's going to be deep criticism of the president. Now, the other thing you need to remember here is that it is possible that all of the decisions made here, these are humans making the decisions, weren't right. And that's where legitimate oversight comes in. Let's understand the facts and then come to a conclusion as the Article 1 authority in this country, the United States Congress, about whether we think they did it right. What is not helpful is coming to conclusions, talking about impeachment, calling it weakness, when you have no facts. And that, of course, is what you have heard and continue to hear going on right now.
Congressman, while I have you, I do want to pivot to Tuesday, the State of the Union address by the president. What do you want to hear?
Well, I think, the president's in a pretty strong position to talk about what I think Americans care most about, which is not Chinese balloons over South Carolina, but in fact, the economic health of the union. And we just saw a staggering jobs report, a stunning jobs report, 500,000 jobs created. Nobody expecting that. Inflation seems to be moderating. So, we should never lose sight as we get obsessed with balloons over Montana, that what really matters to the American people is, are they employed? Are their wages going up? And is inflation coming down? And I think that stuff looks pretty good for the President of the United States as he addresses the Congress on Tuesday.
Representative Jim Himes, as always, it's good to talk to you. Thank you.